Hi guys, thank you so much for joining me again. Today we are making a Daphnes Diary fall journal. This one's going to be specifically for November, and I'm going to be using a variety of stuff here. I am showing you a bird book. We're using a Daphnes journal diary, Daphnes journal diary, Daphnes Diary magazine, and some tracing paper, looks almost like vellum, to kind of put in as pages. And I am going to be using the cover. I kind of debated using the inside versus using the outside, but I really like the little faux tree with which is a branch basically, and the little girl that has her little umbrella. Like I said, the inside is really cute too, but I ended up using the front cover as the front cover. So first off, I do always trim it to size, just to make sure that I take off that ugly ripped edge. And because I like uniformity, I did cut the bottom a little bit just to kind of make it more even. And then obviously I'm trimming off the Daphnes Diary, kind of trying to figure out how tall I want to make it. And I was trying to get as much as I could of basically as big as I could, big enough to where it was enough to journal, but small enough to where I could use the same pages inside of it, so I could fold them in half. And as you can see, I do end up trimming a little bit more because if not, obviously, if I fold the pages in half inside the pages that are in the magazine, they were going to end up being too narrow. So I did want to make sure that my cover was size appropriate. And now I'm basically doing the same thing to the back cover, just trimming it back, down, not back. I can't speak today. Trimming it down to the same size as the front cover. And it was really hard to pick which side I wanted to use. However, I did end up using it, the front cover for the front, the back for the back. And then with these two little strips that I cut off, I do end up gluing them, as you can see, back to back, just to make that binding, the part that I'm going to use for the spine, thicker. And that way when I sew in my signatures, it'll be sturdy. And because this is going to be a 1 month only journal, a gratitude journal for November, I do only make the spine about 1 inch thick, just because I only plan on putting in 2 signatures in there. And then to bind it together, I do end up using burlap on the outside, but on the inside, I do just use tape. The painter's, that yellow tape, I'm sorry, I forget the name of it. You'll see it in a second. And I do reinforce it with glue just to make sure that the painter's tape isn't going to peel off. And as you can see, I put it on the inside. And I do love using this tape because you can paint over, glue other things over, because it is sort of like a paper-based tape. So it is sturdy enough for me to use for this, as well as it takes well to other mediums on top of it. And then anytime I have leftover tape like this, on this case, on top and on the bottom, I do always just fold it over and glue it, just as a reinforcement. It really helps those edges, those ends of the top and the bottom of the journal to really be strong, so that way it doesn't tear or rip over time from using it throughout the time that I'm working on it. And then, as I had mentioned before, I am using a piece of burlap for the outside of the journal. And every time I use actually burlap or any kind of fabric, I do like to make a little beard of, either tear it, you can't really tear burlap. So I always cut it straight, following the lines of each individual thread as it's woven. And with these, I just kind of pull out a few threads to make it even all the way around. Typically, if I use fabric, like normal fabric, I just tear it and it creates that little beard around it. And I'm just using the same glue here. Typically I do use fabric tack, but I was out when I was making this journal, I'm sorry. And now I have some, but it doesn't help me for this video. But typically, like I said, I use fabric tack. It's just more permanent adhesive. And this one's the first time that I've used, not the very, very first time, but the first time I've used this glue for this specific purpose. So hopefully it does a good stick. And then I do always recommend to kind of smear it. Don't leave the goops because it will go through and you'll see it on the fabric on the other side. So I always, which is why I love fabric tack. But if you don't have fabric tack or you're using school glue or tacky glue, just smear it so that it doesn't leave those, dark, wet looking spots on the spine. And then as you can see, I do always bend it and kind of stretch it out just to make sure that the glue kind of goes in everywhere and all those nooks and crannies. And then I open it back up to kind of spread the fabric back straight. If not, it will leave those indents on there. And it's not pretty personally. I don't think it is. So I always do just smooth it out. And then I leave it alone till it dries. And while that dries, and that is quick drying glue, so it would be dry by the time I pick out my pages. So here I am just going through again the Daphnes Journal. Why do I keep calling it Daphnes Journal? Daphnes Diary. It's because I always use Daphnes Diary magazines for journals. Anyways, I'm just going through the pages that I know that I'm not going to cut anything out of. Like as I'm looking through, see, like I point out to those, I really like those two little pieces. Anything that I could use as ephemera or anything that I could fussy cut, that I could turn into anything else, I don't use. So I kind of go through the pages that I essentially don't like. Anything that, see, like I'm pointing out here that on the script, I really like the scripts, the font that, that they use on these Daphnes Diaries magazines. So I do always save those pages because I end up either cutting shapes out of them or using them as background. So I don't touch those. Again, I just look for pages that I know, that I see that don't have anything that I could cut out of, that I could add in there, because most of the time I do end up collaging over the entire thing. And if I'm not going to use these pages for anything else, this is a great use. Plus, in case you've never seen or touched the Daphnes Diary magazine, the paper is thicker than normal magazine. I feel like it's slightly thicker than copy paper. Almost like as if it was 1.5 pages thickness of regular copy paper. So it is a good sturdy paper. And that's why I use it in here along with other. I am going to be using the pages from that cat book and the bird book and the tracing paper. And then once I've selected all my pictures, or not pictures, on my pages, I do fold them all in half because I am going to be putting them in signatures. And I do always pick the exact same amount of pages for them. Obviously, before I fold them, I'm going to trim them here and trim off the rough edges. But anyways, I do always select the exact amount for all my signatures. I like them all to be exactly the same. And then I typically do put them in the same order. So if it's like 2 magazine pages, then the tracing paper, then 1 magazine page, then the cat picture, the page from the cat book, I'm sorry. I do always do them in the same order for both. I don't know why I like the uniformity of having all my signatures the same. So like I said, I do fold them in half here and separate them into 2 even groups. I believe I was going for 32 pages. I don't know what I was thinking. I ended up, and I mean 24 pages, not 20. I'm so sorry, not 24. What am I thinking here? 32 pages, not 32 sheets. And I ended up doing 32 sheets, which then gives me 64 pages, which is a lot more than what I wanted to, because this is going to be specifically for a fall, like gratitude month of November journal, just so I can write something every day that I'm thankful for. And like a dummy, I don't know what I was thinking. I ended up doing 62 pages. So now I have room to decorate, a page, and actually more like 2 pages, and then write down what I'm grateful for that day, and then maybe decorate another 2 pages and write down what I'm grateful for. But sometimes it happens, and it just gives me more room to work in it, I guess. But I didn't mean to do that many pages. So on these pages from the book, I do trim them down. I am just doing 2 so that I have 2 pages, 2 inserts for each signature. So I end up doing, I think it's 8 pages, because I'm going to double them up and then glue 2 together to make 1 sheet. But I do trim them trim them up. I can't speak today, gosh. And then I do glue each 2 pages together so that I can fold them. And a little trick when I do this is that I always smear the glue, as you see. And when I put it, I stick the page, see, as you can see, and stick the edge of that overlying page right on the center of the glue so that the edge of it has glue, and then I peel it up and re-stick it just to ensure that all the edges of both sheets of paper have glue. And then again, if you kind of look closely, I always smear it so that this page has glue all the way to the edge. And then when I grab the other one, I put the edge right up on the center of it, make sure it touches, peel it up, and then put it where I want to sit it so that, like I said, both edges have glue all the way to the end. And here I only show 2, but I do end up going back to get another 4 pages so that I can make 2 of them. And then here, normally what I do is I fold them in half. And then that actually works well, especially if you're using old books, because the pages are more fragile. And with this little technique, it does reinforce it. So you're basically getting the double amount of pages, of thickness, I'm sorry, right where you fold it, where you're going to insert that needle to bind the book. So it works out pretty well. And next I am going through this kitty cat book that I've had for a while. And I am selecting pictures that have like the watercolor drawing image on the back. The other side I do intend to just collage over. But I do like these. They're so cute. These little pictures with the cats are. The cat on it, I'm sorry. Sounds like I can't talk at all throughout this whole video. But anyways, I am selecting pictures that look like they would fit in the actual journal. So I don't want it, some of them were like taking up the whole page, and I was going to have to trim it out, trim it up, trim the image, so, or the paper, so that would fit. So I did keep that in mind. And then I'm not sure if it was clear or not, but I did pull out a couple pages that said November on it, just because I didn't realize that this book had months in it. So I'm like, perfect, now I can put November in the front of it and use another little November throughout the journal. Like incorporate it in there somehow, since I am going to be using this to notate basically my gratitude for the month. But I am going to be using the same technique I used to bind the pages for with the birds. So it's basically the same thing. I'm just kind of figuring out which 2 images I want to put, and there is no specific reason as far as which image I chose with image, aside from like the placement of where the cats were. And I wanted to make sure that when I folded those pages, I wasn't folding any part of any cat. And again, I am pulling out a few pages from this tracing paper, which I ended up doing it once on one of my journals, and because it's sheer, you can kind of see through it. So I really liked how that looks. There is no specific reason, like I'm not going to glue anything or decorate these tracing pages. It's just purely because I like the way it looks in there, because it looks cute. And the same with these, what are they? The sheets for laminating that I had put petals and stuff in a while back. So I'm finally going to be using them for this journal. And I used these, I think they're gold, what are they called? Gold something. Little flowers that they're very, you kind of see them everywhere in the fall time. Goldberry? No, I can't remember the name. If I remember it, I'll insert it in here. But I had put them in between, and actually I had a fear that they were gonna rot, because like a dummy, when I laminated them, I didn't let them dry completely. I just put them in a book, and a couple days later I pulled them out, and I realized that they still had moisture in it, because when I laminated it, you could see that it had moisture in there. Like it looked like almost like steamed or foggy from the moisture that got trapped in there. But now at this point, it's been like over a month since they've been in there, so I feel like if it didn't rot before, it should be good now. So I'm going ahead and going, wow, well, just scratch that, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna go ahead and put them in this journal and fold them in half. And as you can see, I trimmed them to put in here, and I am now folding these the kitty cat pages now that it gave them a little time for the glue to dry. And like I said, these are, whenever you layer pages like this, it's great because it really does reinforce that that fold when you stick the needle through there to bind it. It's perfect because it's double the thickness. And now I am just basically going through all my papers here and kind of divided them equally. That's whatever's similar, one in each pile. And that way I personally like to have exactly the same amount of the exact same type of paper on each signature. So I am just kind of dividing my stack of papers that I'm going to be using here to put in the journal. And I need to trim the little kitty cat pages here. Didn't realize that I had forgot to trim those. Just so that they don't stick out past the binding of my journal. And again, I just do start to put them together in the order that I like. When I do this, I do typically do the exact same thing to both signatures. I think I mentioned that before. So if it's 2 magazine pages and then I stick, I don't know, one of these vellum looking sheets, the tracing paper, then another magazine, whatever order I do with both signatures. So I kind of do pay attention to what I'm doing. That way I can put them the same, just because I like it to be uniformed. I know it's kind of a weird thing. Some people don't care. I personally do. Is to each their own. I just do always copy what I do on both signatures. And for the binding, I do just get a piece of paper, fold it in half, and then fold it to the ends in, just so that it's even. I personally never go and take the time to measure exact measurements, especially because I do tend to just put 2 to 3 signatures. I don't do like 8 or 9. I've seen people do 6, those large amounts. I always end up doing 2 or 3. And they're for me. I don't sell them. I typically don't give them away. I just, again, they're for me. I'm just crafting my own journal. So I'm not too particular about the exact measurements of them. I just kind of do this as a general guide. And the only thing I can recommend is always mark the top and the bottom of each on your little template, so that you know what was the top and what was the bottom, because you'll put it down and you'll realize that you flipped it. And no matter how you measure it, somehow it always ends up being slightly off. So I highly recommend marking top and bottom, just so you know where. And here I am just piercing the binding, or actually I think it is a binding of my journal cover. And then I do always poke the back, just so that the holes are pretty clear and I can see where they were made. And here I'm just kind of showing you that, make sure you place the top with the top. And then every time I do my signatures here, I do always kind of move my papers around, just to kind of make sure that each page is centered, because they're not all the same height. And that way when I go to do my holes, I don't end up accidentally with 2 holes on one sheet and another page having 3. So I just like it so that it's more even. And then most of the time I don't. Some people put a binder clip just to keep the pages from moving. Again, I do them for myself. I don't really care. So I don't usually put like a binder clip to hold them. I just kind of put the paper in place, stab through, and just make my holes. Just kind of keep the paper slightly bent, so that when you stab it through, all the papers are bent and they'll keep their shape together. And when you are doing this, just make sure that you always do triple the amount of cord. And I always do 3.5, just to make sure that it's long enough. Especially I like putting dangles on mine, or little beads and stuff. So if you do want to do that, I would probably suggest honestly 4 times the length, just so that you have enough that it dangles past the bottom of the journal, instead of being in beads hanging in the middle, because it will end up making your book really fat. And then here I do always start with the center. I always go to the bottom hole, back into the pages, and then over to the top hole, and then back to the center, and then tie in my pages together. Another thing that I can recommend to make it easier is I used to actually bind my pages together into a signature, and then after that bind them into the cover. The exact same steps, but I would end up with double the thread going through all the signatures, so I kind of stopped doing that. But as you can tell, like sometimes you struggle when you do just one step versus doing two steps. So if that's just your cup of tea and you prefer to do the signatures and then do the binding, that's totally up to you. You can do that as well. It's just, it doesn't make it a little easier. It's just takes a bit longer because you're basically doing this double amount of thread. And then the last thing I can recommend is for you to really just pull tight on the cord, just to make sure that your pages aren't wiggling in there, because I've done it to where I didn't pull them tight enough, and then my signature's really loose and flopping kind of like all over the place. So just make sure you tie it real nice and tight. And then I personally do 3 to 4 knots with this wax thread. This is the first time I've used it, that I purchased it specifically for binding books. But I did tie it 3 times. It just kind of depends on the thread and how thick it is. And as you can see here, I did tie a couple strings on the binding, just because I do want dangles on the spine as well. That's really just a preference, but I love the way they look when you dangle some beads on the spine. So again, this is just something I like adding to here too. And here she is, the final finished my gratitude journal for October. Just doing a quick flip through of the pages, and as you can see, here's that tracing paper, and it looks really cool mixed in here. Just whatever page I end up decorating, you'll be able to see through from one side to the other. And then these laminating sheets with the petals, like I said, will look great too once it's all in there. And yeah, pretty much it. Like I said, I will dangle some beads from all these, but I'm very excited to start on this. I'll definitely show you guys what I'm working on as we finish it or work throughout it. Again, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys liked it, and I hope you have a good one.